Hi everyone, so for those of you who have been longtime viewers of this channel, you might remember a series I used to do called Smart Answers to Stupid Comments. Well, unfortunately, about a year ago, YouTube changed their community guidelines and I had to delete all of those videos because they're a little harsh, didn't quite match up with the guidelines. But everybody liked that series, they thought it was funny, informative, so I wanted to keep it going, and just a couple weeks ago I tried rebooting the series. But unfortunately, once again, YouTube updated their community guidelines, and that video isn't quite safe, so had to remove that too. But I like the Smart Answers to Stupid Comments thing. I like that format, so I thought I'd just update it to keep in line with the new community guidelines, at least temporarily. So the new series is going to be called, you already read the title, The Worst Comments, and this is a special first edition. This is the Grass-Fed Beef edition. So the other day I uploaded a video titled Elise Parker versus Vegan Gains, and in that video I just debunked a bunch of myths about grass-fed beef. I proved that it actually is not environmentally friendly, and in fact, conventionally raised livestock is much more environmentally friendly than grass-fed beef. And quite a lot of people had a few things to say in the comments section, so let's go through it.
It takes a rather special person to think that a ruminant animal walking around eating its natural diet could possibly be devastating to the environment.
Well, if you were actually paying attention to my video, you might have noticed that I actually shared a study on screen that compared grass-fed beef to conventionally raised beef, and compared to grass-fed beef, conventionally raised beef required 56.3% of the animals, 24.8% of the water, 55.3% of the land, and 71.4% of the fossil fuel energy, and of course, conventionally raised livestock also produced fewer greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, big surprise, feeding cows exclusively grass is far more environmentally devastating. And I like how you say, oh, but it's natural for cows to eat grass. Well, you know what isn't natural? Bulldozing down forests to make room for grass-fed beef. You realize in some regions, animal agriculture is responsible for nearly 80% of terrestrial biodiversity loss? There are so many adjectives and insults I want to throw at you, but unfortunately YouTube is preventing me from doing that. And here's another genius.
Huge portions of the planet is naturally grasslands, and a lot of the area used for grazing couldn't be used to grow crops anyway, so the land argument is more or less a moot point.
Okay, so that's completely and utterly false. Huge portions of the planet are natural grasslands that can be used for pasture. If you look at the United States, for instance, the current pasture grassland resources can only support 27% of the current beef supply. So only a very small percentage of the beef supply can actually exist off of natural pasture land, which is why all over the world forests are being destroyed to make room for grass-fed beef. In Australia, the main cause of deforestation is cattle ranching. You probably heard on the news recently that the Brazilian rainforest is being burnt down, again to make room for grass-fed beef. Do you not understand the concept of supply and demand? If there's not enough grass to feed cattle, and there's a huge demand for beef, people are going to clear out forests to make room for more grass-fed livestock. So, it's kind of in our best interests to reduce beef consumption ideally to zero. To claim that it doesn't matter, I hate you.
Yes, it uses more land, but guess what? It's actually beneficial for the land to have more animals grazing on it. Unlike monocropping, it actually replenishes the topsoil instead of depleting it.
So this is just more ignorant nonsense. Here's a review that compared the long-term effects of manures versus fertilizers. They found that there was no significant difference between manures and fertilizers in terms of long-term effects on crop production. Manures can also cause greater runoff and poorer water quality, so they're not necessarily any better than fertilizers. Here's another meta-analysis covering the same thing. They looked at data from 20 long-term experiments in Europe, and they found that organic inputs do not necessarily increase crop yield so long as sufficient nutrients are supplied by mineral fertilizers. The Food and Agricultural Organization have also outlined methods to prevent prevent soil erosion and improving soil quality, and there are ways of preventing erosion and improving soil quality that don't rely on manure. Polycultures, agroforestry systems, and cover crops are some of the ways to prevent soil erosion and improve soil quality. So, long story short, we don't need to bulldoze or burn down forests, making many species go extinct just to make room for grass-fed beef so that these cows can shit all over our food. There are many ways of preventing soil erosion that don't involve livestock, and if you want to replenish soils, you can use fertilizers, and this doesn't seem to have any effect on crop yields. So it is absolutely ridiculous for you to claim that, oh yeah, grass-fed beef, it's environmentally friendly, when it is one of the most devastating, wasteful, and inefficient ways to produce food.
And when it comes to the water usage, guess what? Most of what a grazing animal drinks is rainwater, water that would naturally fall anyway, whether the animal is there or not.
So this is just more ignorant nonsense. Water use is going to vary heavily by region, but a lot of areas don't get consistent rainfall, so they can't rely on surface water and rainwater to hydrate their livestock, their forage crops, their pasture land. California, for instance, very dry state. Obviously, they have to rely on irrigated water, and as you can see, a lot of this water goes to pasture lands, forage crops to feed these grass-fed animals, grass-fed beef. So this is massively going to contribute to the water cost in a grass-fed system. And on top of that, you also have to consider that grass-fed beef doesn't grow as fast or as large as conventionally raised livestock, and that's going to massively contribute to the water cost. And you keep ignoring the study that I've already shown in my previous video. If you actually take a look at the study, they found that conventionally raised livestock only uses 1/4 of the water that grass-fed livestock would use. So you have no argument. Conventionally raised livestock uses far less water than grass-fed livestock. Is this getting through to you? Grass-fed beef is not environmentally friendly.
And as for the fossil fuel argument goes, that meat requires the same processing and transport, but doesn't require fossil fuels to grow, process, and transport their feed. It's literally insane to suggest that a grain-fed animal would require less fossil fuels than a grass-fed one.
And again, Genius here keeps ignoring the research I referenced. So if you take a look at the study comparing grass-fed versus conventional beef, the conventional beef used about 30% less fossil fuels. And if you actually read, the words that are on the paper, the researchers said that the greater use of fossil fuel energy in the grass-fed system results from cropping and harvesting practices for conserved forages to support animals during winter months. So, yeah, that's another issue of a grass-fed system. It's not literally all grass. A lot of forage crops like alfalfa have to be grown, harvested, processed, stored to feed these animals during winter months when you run out of pasture. So again, that just contributes to the carbon footprint, the waste in the system. And the last thing this guy said was,
I wonder why those massive herds of buffalo didn't cause the ice caps to melt back in the day, since grass-fed ruminant animals are so devastating to the environment.
Well, I'll tell you why that didn't happen. It's because hundreds of millions of buffalo didn't exist back then. Hundreds of millions of buffalo weren't being bred for meat consumption, and we also weren't knocking down massive chunks of forest just to make extra grasslands to feed these animals. And if you read the UN's recent climate report, they found that if everyone were to go vegan, not only would that massively reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but it would also increase the food supply and reduce land use. So we would be able to produce more food, be able to feed more people by 2050, and use less land than we're currently using today if everyone were to switch to a plant-based vegan diet. So you have no argument. There are no environmental benefits to beef, grass-fed or otherwise. A vegan diet wins out in every way. And a few people actually tried to help me out in the comments section. They responded to this guy saying, he actually provided research. And the dude responded,
Oh wow, he provided a study? Well, that must mean he and the study he's citing are both correct. Please Think critically and don't just blindly trust everything people say because they happen to provide a study to back it up.
Wow, this guy is a deep critical thinker. Well, I think that just proves I completely wasted my time. And if you like this video, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon or through my website. I have some funding perks you may find interesting. If you're looking for clothing, then check out the Vegan Gain store. And if you're looking for online coaching, then check out Quality Gains. He offers customized meal and training programs. And if you click the link in the description down below, you'll get a free ebook. And as always, keep making those vegan gains.
Beef. What a relief. When will this poisonous product cease? This is another public service announcement. You can believe it or you can doubt it. Let us begin now with the cow. The way it gets to your plate and how.